As a result of the conflicts that Tommy Billy Bob Thornton and Cooper Jacob Loveland find themselves in, which are all connected to the patch, the 5th episode of Landman, titled Where Is Home, provides a great deal of anticipation and suspense. The 63-minute episode is the longest episode of the Taylor Sheridan series to date, and there is a solid reason for this. During the time that Tommy is adjusting to his new life with Angela Ali Larder and their daughter, Ainsley Michelle Randolph, living in his house, fresh challenges and difficulties arise in the oil field. During this time, Cooper continues to communicate with Ariana Paulina Chavez, despite the fact that Manuel J.R. Villarreal has warned him against doing so. Throughout episode 5, Tommy can be seen juggling the two sides of his life, both his attempts at putting his family back together and troubles in the patch. He remains the focal center of attention for a large number of people in Landman, particularly for the cartel, as a result of this. Over the course of a tense confrontation, the cartel makes an attempt to extract money from Tommy in exchange for the truck accident that occurred in the 1st episode, which led to their most recent supply of drugs catching fire. On the other hand, the protagonist informs them of the dreadful consequences that are waiting for them if they attempt to play around with the oil fields. He does this with an excellent level of abrasiveness. However, it's evident the cartel is still going to be a problem, which Tommy soon calls Monty John Ham about. As a result of boss Mustafa Speaks refusing to send his workers back on the patch until the criminal enterprise has been resolved, the sense of urgency that is associated with the situation becomes increasingly apparent. The stress, on the other hand, follows Tommy home, where Angela has cooked a family meal following a hilarious sequence in which she redecorates the house with force. His admission to the happenings of the day results in a quarrel, but the speed with which they make up demonstrates that they have grown as individuals since their divorce. Nevertheless, the most memorable moment in Tommy's narrative occurs at the very end, when he gives Angela permission to accompany him on his visit to Monty. On the way, they made a pit stop at a construction site where pipes were stacked in an unorganized manner on the back of a truck. He is killed when one of the workers kicks them, which causes them to fall on top of him and crush him to death. Much like episode 1's unexpected climax, this tragedy represents the risks of Landman's oil fields with tragic somberness. In addition, given that Angela was present throughout the aftermath, it appears that she and her husband may be able to reach a consensus regarding the implications that his employment has on his mental health. On the other side of the Norris family coin is Cooper, who is still suffering with the impact of losing his first crew in the 1st episode of the series. After the conclusion of the 4th episode, Ariana gave him a call, and the 5th episode kicked off with his arrival at her residence. In addition to assisting her in organizing her finances and mowing her lawn, he establishes a relationship with her by virtue of the fact that they have both suffered a loss. In spite of the fact that the latter leads to a violent conflict with Manuel, Ariana takes a stand for herself by kissing Cooper in order to enrage her cousin. The fearlessness of her character is exemplified by the courage with which she makes a decision in the heat of the moment. It was a beautiful example of how people can still find ways to live through their grief, even in the midst of the never-ending hardships that the patch presents. Developing a relationship between her and Cooper was another aspect of the show that stood out as particularly noteworthy. It is difficult to deny the sparks that are flying between them, despite the fact that it is obvious that the young man is not searching for a romantic connection. The darker aspects of the program were given some much-needed lightness by these wholesome moments, which offered hope inside despondency, despite the losses that they had both experienced. It was a beautiful example of how people can still find ways to live through their grief, even in the midst of the never-ending hardships that the patch presents. The unfortunate reality is that this is undone by Manuel Antonio Octavio Rodriguez and a bunch of guys who ambush Cooper at his trailer and brutally beat him. While the last view of Tommy's son shows his calm corpse lying on the floor, the oil workers who work for Landman leave with Boss in the morning. This, in conjunction with the crushed worker, gives the show's darkness almost too much room to breathe, despite the fact that his unknown fate adds more possible tragedy to his father's plate. On the other hand, it does pave the way for a dramatic continuation, the outcome of which will depend on whether or not Cooper is still alive. In episode 5, the key aspects consist of the major events that Tommy and Cooper experience. Both of these episodes give compelling stories that continue to increase the tension that is present in the patch. Both the well-meaning son and the aggressive father suffered through obstacles in their own unique ways, and Thornton and Loughlin's performances in this episode were remarkable. Both of them went through the same kinds of challenges. Despite the fact that the couples made decisions that were made with good intentions, their disagreements not only enhanced the show but also highlighted the intensity that exists within the Norris family as a whole. Despite the fact that it is highly improbable that Landman would slow down on the dark times anytime soon, it appears like they are building up to some intense pinnacles in the future. There is a lot that the second half of the program can do to address some of Tommy's problems, and it may even be able to bring a few of them together in the process. This is true even if it seems like Tommy's problems are becoming worse. Despite the fact that it continues to provide stories that are both heartbreaking and reassuring, the series is still able to keep a healthy equilibrium, which is ideal for the goals that it is attempting to achieve.